moment, what we may be experiencing more than any other time in our country's history is that there are groups of people that are intentionally changing the definitions of words for the purposes of obfuscating and also for the purposes of taking power away from the people that they want to take power away from. And that's happened in other countries at different parts of history.
Okay,
But
yeah, it's say throughout history. Huh?
yeah, and one of the things I would compare it to, we used to have um, language that was academic. Like for instance, I don't know how old you were when you knew that the Paramount Pictures things. When somebody said, "Well, it's really Paramount," but well, like that's important, right? Or tantamount, or some of the other 50-cent words that people would toss out into conversations at cocktail parties so that they would sound elite. It stood out like a sore thumb. Well, it's happening now, but they're changing the meaning of words and the context such that it's upsetting for many people. And the neat part of it is that we did a whole episode on gaslighting, but the neat part of it is they'll say, "No, we're not doing that. You just don't,
Which
you
is
just don't,
gaslighting.
you just don't understand. We're not doing that.
Which is gaslighting.
You just don't understand." And that can leave people in a state of complete disempowerment.
Hmm.
When you are, I mean, the whole idea of mentally dominating somebody else is when you get somebody and you can get a large group of people to doubt themselves
Yeah.
and to question what their motives are as a human being, and to be self-destructive and self-loathing. They're completely off the playing field.
Hmm.
They're no longer part of the consideration. However, that is in my opinion, that is the definition of a dysfunctional culture, where one group has to do that to another group in order to forward what their desires are. And I think that's what we were talking about when I was a kid, that no matter who you're with, always be respectful. You treat people the way you'd like to be treated, and never, ever, ever intentionally do harm to another person. I don't know. Are there some other ones that you were taught?
Well, first, do no harm is something I think is, applies to almost everybody.
It's the Hippocratic Oath, right?
Right. Which it wasn't designed for doctors either, which,
For human beings.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that's ultimately, you know, love one another, treat each other, I mean, any of the commandments, you
Yeah.
know, come to mind. Yeah. Basically, don't kill each other, I mean,
That was pretty
or,
early low level programming. I agree. Yes.
love each other as yourself. All the rest of them are commentary, basically. So see rule one kind of thing, see.
Exactly. So as time goes on, and certain people say, you know what, maybe it's time to be antisocial. Maybe it's time, to stop compromising. Maybe it's time to just dominate. And at first it sticks out like a sore thumb. But as time goes on and people start to question, and I think a lot of people are right now. I mean, I've had some great conversations. I've listened to some other great podcasts, and you don't have to get really deeply into this. All you have to do is listen to any one of the major broadcast organizations. And within 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to hear that they're making a case about somebody else who is horrible. They're not
Right.
there. And the they that they're talking about may not even have a name. It's a group of people.
And that's what, because I was just listening to a gentleman that kind of put it into perspective of like how the human mind works and why media has become so sensational, because our human brain, if it's status quo, our ego just wants to protect ourselves, us.
Yes.
So if you're just hearing something that you agree with, you won't even pay attention to it. It's not even on your radar. So in order for us to pay attention to it, it has to be something that sounds like it could be hurtful or have some, it's going to affect my life in a negative way. So my ego will kick in and start listening, which I thought was interesting. I mean, because it makes a lot of sense. If it's status quo, your little ego just says, "Oh, now I'm going to pay attention to something else." But
Yeah, and unfortunately, as we were saying before, if you break the trust and respect is gone, you'll never get it back. I think, a lot of the old-fashioned thinking that led to the new thinking in the 1800s, the whole new thought, where um, the traditional ideas about how people learn and how and what's important to program people with from an early age, I think they did damage,
mhm.
by all of these truisms, and where it's black or white, it's this or that, one idea versus another idea, as opposed to what human beings have a difficult time dealing with is conflict between the ideas. Well, now hang on. There may not be conflict, but when you go to a Chinese restaurant and you order a bowl of hot and sour soup, and you do that for like 21 days in a row, by the time you get to the 12th or the 13th day, you're going to start noticing what's different from what you've had before. And maybe it's like when you had a week ago, but not like the one you had yesterday. Life is just full of that kind of an experience where
Mm,
there's
right.
immediate comparison. So I'm not sure that people have that difficult a time being able to hold, different degrees and variations of a theme, as opposed to this or that.
Mm.
And that's where I see a lot of the leadership rhetoric and a lot of the stuff that goes on in media and social media, either good or bad, evil or good, you
And
know,
that's subjective too.
100%. It's according to who seems to be talking at the moment.
Right.
And if you step back away from it a little bit and you think to yourself, in what way does distinguishing this from this make our world a better place?
Good point.
I don't see it.
Right. Well, and that's that's giving consideration to looking at both sides and seeing that one and one is not making two here.
Right. So the kind of interesting full circle for consideration, and I think we've done a pretty good job on both of these words here today, but I think the bringing them back to the center of the stage and inviting people to ponder workability. Um, not the definition that you have of a word that doesn't work for you. If you argue for the definition of a word that doesn't work for you, all you get to keep is that that word doesn't work for you. However, if you put the energy and the effort and you build the muscle with understanding how that word works for other people, I could see myself, saying, "I time." It actually gives me goosebumps when I say that. It's a great word. And if I wanted to take a moment and really think about, I'm fortunate. Did you take a foreign language in school?
Oh yeah, not that it helped any, but or he's a Spanish, or you're a French, or you're a German.
So you have an appreciation for how the same word can be spelled many different ways.
Oh yes.
I do too, and I really loved it. I took French from 7th grade to 12th grade, so for 5 years, 6 years, whatever that is. I'm pulling your leg. Of course, I was an altar boy, and when I was an altar boy, the mass was in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
So we became really good at it sounds like muttering in our
Yeah.
response. And then we had these little cards that had the words down in front of them. We didn't know what we were saying.
No.
But so bringing words back to the center of the stage in whatever way that it makes sense. And I invite people, I love listening to linguists. Are you familiar with a man named John McWhorter?
No.
I invite you to take a look at him.
How are you spelling it?
I believe it's McWhorter.
That's a word. That's a name.
So he's one of the people I have a lot of respect for. I could see myself really doing the work to become a professor of linguistics, simply because I think it makes the world a better place to have somebody around every once in a while that can basically say, no, time out,
Yeah, wait a minute.
time out. I can hear where both of you guys are right. And what if we were able to step back from a situation? Like, let's take the Civil War, for example, right? Do you think for a moment that anybody got up from their kitchen table and went and put a uniform on and went out into the weeds and the woods and all that stuff and tried to shoot at other people because they knew they were wrong? They knew they were right.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So you have to have some respect for that. And you have to have some respect for anybody that goes out of their way to make a change and a difference in the world, even if that difference isn't good for people. You really have to understand, what was going on in Europe and what was going on in China and what was going on in Russia, what was going on in Brazil, what was going on in Spain, what was going on in the United States. These were not good and evil people. The outcomes and their acts may have been evil. However, being right versus being right gives you conflict if there's no agreement. And we need to know that. I mean, what happened from a historical standpoint is far less important. That this battle took place on this date and was in this location and had this number of people and 1066 and 1492 and all those important dates. Not that important. What do they mean? Was there a lesson to be learned from it? Is there a lesson to be learned by studying it in detail and reading all of the good, the bad, and the ugly? I think there is. I think the more you are able to put yourself in the shoes of the people that were in that place at that time, even if it's at your office last week, studying that history for a moment and trying to figure out, well, let me just take a moment here and let me just make that person right. Mm-hmm. If I were them, what would cause me to put that kind of energy into a conversation that does not work?
Right. No.
And that's empathy beyond just getting the feelings straight. Could I argue for their behavior in any way, shape, or form if I set my own ideas about what didn't work about it aside? And I think there's power in that. I think there's a lot of power in that.
It's empathy in a power pose.
I think it's all of those and a bag of chips. So anyhow, I love listening to smart people, and I try to listen to what they're saying and not believe it. I'm not interested in having a more powerful belief system than I had yesterday. I'm more interested in having better questions than I had yesterday.
And the powerful will often, the smart, powerful people are smart, will tell you, don't believe a word I say, or don't follow me. The best leaders or best gurus or whatever, however you want to call them, thought thinkers, thought leaders. Don't follow me, follow yourself.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be there when you're in that moment where you have to make a decision.
Right.
You got to lead yourself. And so that's the muscle that you want to build in life. And that's kind of been my message. Yeah, exactly. When all else fails, just stop and do the power pose for 2 minutes.
That's everybody. That's everybody